Well, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. I know there's a ton of sessions happening here at Build, so this panel is very thrilled that you all chose to join us. My name is 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗀. I'm a Corporate Vice President and General Manager of our Azure Experiences and Ecosystems team here at Microsoft. Part of my team's responsibility is for the Microsoft for Startups program, where we really help try to support founders and help them innovate and grow. As part of the program, we offer up to $150,000 worth of Azure credits, discounted licenses on first and third-party tools, mentorship, technical guidance, and support. But I think we all know it's very hard to build a startup and make it successful. You need a lot more than that. You need access to cutting-edge technology. You need capital to help you grow. You need go-to-market support to be able to scale your customer base. And so over the last couple of years, we've been working across Microsoft to really bring together lots of different teams to provide more of a comprehensive support system for startups, providing them with access to all the latest and greatest AI tooling, cloud infrastructure, capital, and go-to-market support to really help them at every stage of their entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to finding product market fit, growing and scaling and beyond. So today, that's really what we're going to talk about here. I've got a panel of some of the top leaders at the company, each who have a unique perspective around what does it take to really become a successful AI startup and to build and grow and scale. So in terms of how we're going to spend our time together, we're going to hear first from our panel of folks at Microsoft. Again, just hearing about where they're focused in supporting startups, as well as their perspective around what it takes to really win in the era of AI as a startup. And then we're going to welcome a couple startups on the stage who are part of our program to hear from them around what their journey has been like, what's working, what's not working, and some of the lessons learned along the way. So really fast before we get started, just so I know who we're talking to, who here is a startup founder? Okay, all right. Who here is an enterprise customer? All right, about 50-50 split. Okay, great. And developers in the room? Lots of developers. Okay, great. Awesome. So let's go ahead and get started. Why don't we go down the line here and just introduce each of you, your name, your role, and sort of how does your work kind of connect to startups?
Awesome. I'm Asha. I run our AI platform for the company. And so you can think about that as any building block that you need that's AI forward to consume in your IDE of choice. So nice to be here.
I'm Ross. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, I lead something called Digital Natives. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. Neither does my mother or father. It's fun trying to explain that one.
Aren't all of these?
Yeah.
Isn't this the digital native group?
I guess that's true. You think about them as the AI-forward companies, typically VC-backed, fast-growing, founder-led, or substantially engaged, and almost always using the very cutting edge of our technology, testing the boundaries of what's possible. And so I think about it across 3 dimensions. How do I help you in things like product innovation? How do we help you with reaching new markets? And of course, how do we help you on the capital side of the house?
Hey everybody, I'm Michael Stewart. I'm managing partner at 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀, Microsoft's venture fund. So I lead investments in 3 areas of the fund. Generative AI, especially techie, frontiers type of stuff, video games, and deep tech.
Hi, I'm Brendan Burns. I'm the Corporate Vice President for Azure Cloud Native and the management platform. And a long time ago at this point, I was also one of the co-founders of the Kubernetes open source project.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to talk first about just what it's like to get started with AI and how some of the product and platform choices that startups make in the beginning, sort of how does that impact the future for the company. So maybe Asha, let's start with you. I know startups are moving very quickly, often not able to think through every layer of what they need to do. But from where you sit, you're doing a lot for Foundry to really help startups get going quickly, and with the agentic experiences and AI tooling to really get a proof of concept out there. At the same time, I think would love to hear sort of, so what are you doing to really help startups get going quickly, but at the same time, what do you wish that startups would think about more early around things like responsibility and security and things like that?
Yep, so it's interesting to give you a sense, our platform's growing pretty quickly. About half are AI native companies. And so for a lot of you in this room, I think it all comes down to the speed to signal type of ratio. And so we're thinking about how do we optimize that and how do we move faster and faster and faster. And the way that we know how to do that is by thinking about all of the raw materials that are coming to us. So the now millions of frontier models and open models and proprietary models, how do we then create scalable scaffolding for you to have repeatable processes to then come out the other side? And we think about that as a factory loop. we build everything in a modular way and we build everything open. Everything is moving too quickly to have any overbuilt systems or kind of SaaS solutions that you're locked into. And so we're really thinking about on day one, how do we help you accelerate that with as few APIs, as few new languages as possible. Now, I think the biggest opportunity that we still have with a lot of our partners is I'm seeing safety and security as an afterthought. And I think that companies are also thinking about it in a traditional sense of how do I protect myself from threats, or how do I extend those threats to AI. More and more in the era of agents, I think that safety and security and trust is really around how do you hold your agent accountable, and how do they behave, and what is that declarative system of record. And I don't think that can be an afterthought. I think that needs to be something that you think about upfront in a modular way that scales with you once you find product market fit. And so we're certainly trying to make that easy by providing a lot of SDKs as well as a lot of tools natively to where you are. But I think it's a really core part of the signals loop that we need to develop together.
So it sounds like kind of secure by design, something that startups should think about really from day one. What do you see when startups are kind of doing it right and they get it right? What are they doing that's different? And what are some of the patterns you're seeing from startups that are kind of ahead of the curve when they're building with AI?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I see is safety and security is not a one-time thing. It's not an opt-in thing. It is an automatic, on by default. It's not bolt-on, it's built in, and it is continuously running and continuously observing and continuously steering the AI application or the agentic application. And I think that, unit testing isn't optional. It's a core part of the workflow. The companies that I'm seeing that are doing this well, it's a core part of the workflow, and it's actually making their agent perform better. And so I'm pretty excited about continuing to build on that and what's possible when you think about always-on observability and always-on monitoring.
And so it sounds like for startups who are doing this well, they're moving fast, but they're also thinking about it as a core part of their product, right? It's not an afterthought, it's not an opt-in, it's a continual investment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing AI evolve, right? AI was an assistant-based application before, right? Q&A. Now we're seeing that it's task-based. In the future, I think we will see it as job-based in terms of being able to take full ownership and autonomously execute end-to-end. And I think we need to think about how safety and security scales, how our tools scale, and how the signals loop scales across that too.
And the stakes just get higher, right?
And the ROI does too.
Yeah.
I think there will be, you can look at ROI as efficiency in level one, and you can look at it as new TAMs and software as services in the future.
Makes sense. One of the things we also hear from our Microsoft for Startups is it's not just about kind of thinking about security and safety from day one, but also scalability, and how do you think about your infrastructure and how does your infrastructure scale? So maybe Brendan would love to hear from you a little bit on, what should startups think about in addition to security and responsibility from day one when they think about their infrastructure and kind of making sure to future-proof things around scale, as well as, how does building on Azure really help startups avoid some of the common pitfalls that they might have around future scalability?
Sure, yeah. I think one of the things that's worth pointing out is we've already seen an enabled scale of AI startups. So I don't know if it's widely known. I think it's relatively widely known, but ChatGPT runs on Azure. So whenever you're playing around with ChatGPT, you're running on top of the Azure Kubernetes service that my team runs. And that's still a hockey stick, right? And that shows, I think, the value. They have to think about some aspects of scale in terms of user management and things like that, but when it comes to scaling their infrastructure, that's something that Azure takes care of for them. And so I think that's one thing to know is, being a hyperscaler means that we have the ability to work with NVIDIA and work with other people at a scale and in anticipation of your success. I think the other thing that's really important for setting up for scale, and I think this is something that Asha pointed out as well, is making sure that your services with automation are set up so that you can bring on more developers. I think even, there's been a lot of hype around exactly how many developers certain AI startups have and things like that, but you're going to need to scale the people in addition to scaling the application. And that only happens if you have testing in the right places, you can onboard people quickly. These are all key aspects to delivering scale. And then also, I would say, with the Kubernetes service in Azure, we take care of all the operational details for you. right? So you don't have to worry about like automatic upgrades or what the latest version that is new, because we're even in the Kubernetes community, we are doing a lot of work to better support AI, whether it's model routing or whether it's access to the latest NVIDIA drivers and things like that. And we take care of all of that for you. So again, you can focus on your models and the applications you're building on top.
I think something you said is a really good point. I mean, a lot of startups that I spend time with, they're always looking for patterns at scale that work. And a lot of the infrastructure we're building maps to patterns at scale that work, and then we commercialize them. So if you think about AI search, it supports ChatGPT, and then we get to take those learnings and scale it. If you think about all of Foundry in our AI platform, all those APIs are the same APIs behind GitHub Copilot, behind all of our AI products as a company that we get to commercialize and scale. When we think about the work we've done with fine-tuning and the ability to use data and interactions to actually improve the model and scale, the Dragon Copilot, which is our health copilot, is one of our first customers, and then we scale. And so I think that is important, whether it's our stack or somebody else's, where you're looking at patterns that scale, and then you're able to use that technology so you don't have to worry about it as a startup, because resources are precious. You have fewer iterations to fail, and I think you should take some of those things out of the equation.
Is there anything specific around kind of AI native applications themselves, either Brendan or Asha, compared to previous eras of the types of applications we've been developing for startup founders to think about when they're thinking early around scalability in the future?
I mean, I will say, like, I feel a little bit like I'm back in the maybe mid-90s, when like each processor that came out had new instructions and new things that you had to use to optimize your application. I think we kind of got used to this idea, that things are going to get a little faster. Maybe you're going to have a little bit different ways of doing things, but you're not going to have to radically change what you do every year or faster. And then it was like that a while ago as Moore's Law was really kicking. And I think we're there now with GPU, right? When I look from generation to generation, especially as GB200 is coming on, like the ways that the infrastructure has to think about it, the ways that my teams have to think about it, are changing every iteration, and I think the ways that developers are thinking about it has to change every iteration as well. And then also the tools that we need to build for you. One of the things I've been focused on a lot lately is this notion that distributed inference is just something that you're going to need to know how to do, but you don't really care, right? Like you just want to run a model and do inference against it. We should be taking care of figuring out how do you split that out across a bunch of GPUs so that you can do it efficiently. And so I think there's a lot of these places where the cloud itself needs to adapt to this idea of providing AI native primitives that you can take advantage of. And I think we're in the early days of that with Foundry and with some of the lower level infrastructure that we're building. And then obviously doing it out in the open and in open source so that we can't have an Azure solution and an AWS solution and a GCP solution. We need to have an industry solution like Kubernetes, like containers, and all of the open source and the CNCF ecosystem to truly raise the playing field for everyone.
But what do you do when things are moving so quickly? And decisions you make today, to your point on Moore's Law, and in 3 months there's a new protocol, in 6 months, any advice for startups, again, either one of you, on just how to think about making decisions today, technology decisions today, implementation decisions, that when things are changing so rapidly and at such a high clip?
I mean, my advice would be, if you're not building for the technology in 2 years from now, you're going to get outpaced. And so I would pick a technology partner that's taking a platform approach. You can't keep up with point solutions. The platform should support all popular protocols, all popular frameworks. They should be open, it should be modular. It should have a deep belief that agents will not only be built on their stack and their cloud, and that's the only useful thing. We're entering into this agentic web where there's a new collaboration model, a new community, a new way of working. And I think you have to align yourself with an organization and partner where your investments start to compound and you can be thinking about the future product that you want to be building instead of right now.
Yeah.
I would maybe the counterpoint to that I would say though is that I think as a leader, your job is to provide clarity, right? And sometimes that means taking a bet and being consistent on it, even as the world is hyping various different things, right? So I think it's really important for execution that your teams understand where they're going. And if you're constantly changing your stack every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, you're just not going to execute. And so I think balancing that, figuring out how do you pick your shots and how do you have clarity is really valuable. And it's worth noting, of course, even last year's AI tech is pretty cool. right? So like you have to be careful that you don't get outpaced, but at the same time, you're still going to be delivering value for your end user, and that delivery is what's important at the end of the day.
So it sounds like a big balance that needs to be struck between how do I really move fast, stay ahead of the curve, but then also think a year in advance, pick the right partner so that I'm really thinking about security, reliability, and scale while I'm actually building and kind of keeping pace. Maybe shifting gears a little bit, Michael, would love to turn to you. You're obviously, we talked a little bit about kind of the product lens, but from an investor lens, what signals do you see that really make these AI startups stand out?
Yeah, and in terms of like the rate of change of technology today, it's a very daunting environment for any investor to like set a thesis. This is what is new and is going to last, and have any of that hold up. And we've already seen our thesis exercises undergo a number of different revisions. And this is not really like, I want to use a metaphor here, but it's not really like technology butterfly collecting exercises. We're not really just looking for like, oh, this new technology, we capture it, it's in a startup, it's in the portfolio. You're really looking for, what is a great business story as an investor. And that's why our criteria for what we think is standing out, it's going to involve some of the same criteria as other VCs, such as what are the factors of sustainable differentiation amidst massive competition, massive numbers of startups. And your ability of the team to lead through that. Those are, I think, table stakes criteria for a leading startup. But then we are backed by Microsoft. Microsoft provides the money for us to invest. We care about whether our startups are going to be relevant to the Microsoft of 2 years from now, to echo the points already made. And so for that, some of that is an X factor that's very difficult to prescriptively state at this time. What is it in the team that we see that reflects enterprise experience at the level that any of you guys see every day? Is it an internalization of safety, security, great governance? That's what's required for AI to thrive in big enterprise. To me, in a way, those values are synonymous with what Microsoft practices as a big company. So even though we're talking about vastly different scales and sizes of companies, we're really looking for, besides the great investment piece, a culture fit that would be similar to hiring or partnering outside of the investment context.
So it sounds like innovation alone isn't enough, right? The technology itself is not going to do it. You got to think about the business model. You got to think about how am I going to actually go to market and sell to, enterprises if you're partnering with Microsoft. How do you think about kind of your role as a venture capitalist and as M12, not just about the capital itself and the dollars, but the partnership with startups?
And it's those aspects of long-term partnership, because equity investments, venture investments, these are marriages, not dating. These are long-term arrangements that involve thinking beyond the strategic fit, the strategic assessment we do at the time of the investment. Should we do a really good job on the investment memo, pat ourselves on the back and say this will hold up for 10 years from now? Of course not. You have to set up the startup for success. So it's looking for some of those cultural factors, but it's also looking at our own platform. Are we providing the mentorship, the resources, the ecosystem exposure? And much of that is thanks to our portfolio development team, that connects deeply to Microsoft and makes that possible. The last thing you want to be in this game is another check. There's just not a lack of investors that believe in AI. Are they believing in AI the exact same way as us? No, and that's the crucial piece that helps us connect to, again, adding value post-investment.
I love that idea, the marriage, not dating. I think we saw there's a lot of startups in the audience who are probably interested in that concept, that there's a lot more than just the check and that there's a lot more around the partnership that M12 can provide. Would love to hear a little more. What's the evaluation process that you typically go through for startups?
Yeah, so we have both I would call it like a structured analysis that we do to think of what's possible with a post-investment plan that might be familiar to somebody that's actually writing down a business plan or doing a consulting plan or something like that. I think the other piece that we pair this with is more of a human intelligence factor. Back to this long-term relationship aspect. Are the founders that we meet and looking for M12 investment. Are they looking for a name on the cap table, or do they just want M12 to just flash by when they have it in a pitch deck or a website? Are they looking to burn up a bunch of cloud credits and then bounce to the next partner? Or are the founders really leaning in and excited and articulating a differentiated idea that would build something meaningful to Microsoft in the future? Those founders that have that ability to do it stand out like bright lights in the night. They're just completely thinking of Microsoft differently than a fungible partner that can be swapped in and out with anybody else. And that's key for us to make sure these investments that we make are relevant, to the parent company and to our partners.
It's a lot more, again, not just the check, right? It's a lot more about that partnership. I think one of the other things that we often see is, startups really interested in integration and interested in working with Microsoft as more of a partner. So would love to hear maybe back, Asha and Brendan, you both sit in product groups and you probably talk to startups all the time who want to integrate, they want to partner with you. Would love to hear, what resonates when you're talking to startups. What do you see the great ones doing? What are the misses that you often see?
For me, I love seeing real, all the demos, but I tune out when the demos aren't live, and I have a hard time when they're not solving real customer problems. I think that too much in the industry is tech up and not customer up, and I think that we need to, and we owe it to working backwards from the customer in order to solve the most important problems and doing it with products that are real, because we can bring the distribution and we are happy to, but what we are looking for are partners that are going to obsess and build better than anybody else for our customers and know it better than anyone else because they have spent so much time with them and they are not sleeping because they are thinking about that problem and they have to will a solution into success. And so that's what I look for.
Yeah, I would definitely double click on that and say, I love the people who really have focused in on user pain, right? Who aren't thinking oh wow, I've built this cool technology or I have this cool idea. If at the end of the day you didn't make someone's life better, it's going to be hard to find product market fit. And so that's absolutely something that is huge to see. I think to the point that Michael made around, I don't want it to be just a check. I think sometimes I see people who are just sort of well, I know that I need to sell to, this set of customers who are saying that they're only on Azure, right? And I'm a lot less interested. It's very clear that I'm just sort of there because I'm the gateway to a set of customers that they want to sell to. I'm not as interested in, obviously we want to help people be successful, but I don't want it just to be a gateway to our field, which is a really excellent, better than any startups field that's out there. Don't want to be just a gateway to a customer that I happen to have an exec relationship with. I want people who genuinely believe that they can take that customer's pain, maybe even a shared pain, right? A pain that the customer's brought to me that I can't address today, and we can go forward together to address that customer pain. That's a huge positive for me. And then I would also say, just in general, when you approach me, if you bring a customer, not just a potential, hey, there's this customer pain, but you actually say hey, by the way, here's this customer, they're already an AKS user, and we found they had this pain, and we're already working with them. That is huge. That's the right way to engage.
So solve real problems, show real tech, not just demos, and a real belief around what the partnership could look like, not just us as sort of a gateway. Yeah, cool.
For sure.
Would love to, we've kind of talked a lot about, what does it take to the very beginnings of building your product to think about things like, responsibility, security, scalability. We talked a little bit about what it's like to raise capital. Let's shift now to on the go-to-market side. We hear in Microsoft for Startups, a lot of what startups are looking for is help, really finding customers and being able to get into, tap into Microsoft's customer base. So Ross, would love to hear a little bit more from you about what do we offer for startups around go-to-market.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk about startups. I think we almost always just sort of natively think of two people in a garage. But when we're talking about startups, we're really talking about the entire software development journey, from two people in a garage ideating all the way up to those that have found category leading status in some market. When we think about those early programs, it's really about how do I get off the ground quickly and cheaply to be able to demonstrate proof, much to your point, that I'm actually solving a problem. One of the key programs that we have there is a thing called Microsoft for Startups, about 120,000 members strong, give or take. But it offers some really powerful assets to startups that are trying to find their way. For example, it offers the credits that Annie mentioned earlier, also gives you access to all of the LLMs and models. It gives you technical support in the background, prioritized access to GPUs. I think most importantly, though, one of the key things it does is it gets you on our radar so that we're aware that you're around and that we know that there's probably a potential for us to engage and help and assist you. Beyond that, there's another program called ISV Success. So I'm sure most of you have heard of the Azure Marketplace, where most of our enterprise customers find their solutions. It gives you an incredible opportunity to be able to reach a lot of customers at scale, and that program assists you in making sure that you're building solutions that are actually viable for that. There's another program called the Pegasus program. It's an invitation only for select industries. I think it's cybersecurity, AI, and
Retail,
Thank
healthcare,
you.
life sciences.
I knew she'd know.
Am I missing any?
Yeah.
Tom, I see you right there. Okay, great.
Which is a team of incredibly experienced architects who will help you find product market fit faster and help you get your product across the line much quicker. So regardless of where you are in your stage, there's some program within Microsoft to be there to assist you.
And how do you see building on Azure, sort of open up those opportunities for enterprise customer relationships?
Yeah, I see a couple of things. So like we said, the marketplace, which I actually think is a lot more powerful than people realize. It's not just that your solutions are getting exposure to all of these enterprise customers and they're going natively to this place to try and find them. There's also something about the credibility that being in that marketplace offers, because now you're leaning on the brand of Microsoft. But the other really important thing is, as a startup, you're really focused on getting your products out quickly, where selling and selling at scale can be a difficult thing to do. So removing that procurement channel and gaining access to those enterprise customers is an incredibly powerful way of reaching those markets. And then, of course, as you continue to deepen your investment with Microsoft, we also have a co-sell arm. I think there's 59,000 sellers strong inside of Microsoft. We have teams of PDMRs who assist our partners in trying to figure out things like where are they best fit in the market, how do they build a business plan, so many more things to try and help assist you on that GTM, including things like how to navigate Microsoft, which can sometimes be challenging.
Sometimes?
Sometimes.
I think that's an
We're
understatement.
recording this, right?
So it sounds like we have a lot of support available.
Yeah.
Maybe flipping it, the perspective of enterprise customers,
Yeah.
you also work a lot with them. What are
Yep.
they interested in when they think about startups? What are they interested in when they think about AI?
I think we're seeing sort of changes across 4 areas, right? And this was a presentation that Jared did, so I'll just borrow parts of his. But the first was about they're looking at how they can enrich the employee experience. And this means how can we make sure that employees are focusing on the highest order things and taking away the administrative tasks, things that Copilot and Designer Studio and things like this that are incredibly powerful for. The second is really about how do you change the experience that you're having with your customer. If you think about customer support today, it's almost always asynchronous. They'll have a concern, they reach out to you, you know very little about them. Copilots and agents offer us a way of being able to reach that customer intimately in their experience with the knowledge that they've already given to those agents to be able to solve their problems faster so they can keep moving more quickly. We also look at things like process and process optimization across the enterprise today. One of my favorite examples is how they now include our code inside of Excel, so CFOs can surface new data that they didn't otherwise have. And then the last, of course, is the innovation curve itself, right? How do we make sure that we're launching faster and faster? I think, the Moore's Law of every 18 months seems to be out the window. I think it's something like every 3 weeks now there's a new model coming out. So how can we get better at launching faster and faster? So if you can solve across one of those 3 dimensions, you're probably speaking the language of the enterprise.
Great. And maybe Brendan, just to kind of pull you into the conversation, would love to hear, what do you see as some common mistakes that startups make when they're trying to kind of sell to the enterprise?
I think there's 2 things that I would highlight. The first is the enterprise is a very complicated place full of the CISO and the regulators, and many, many, many times I think startups think, oh my gosh, if I just have a good enough idea, if I just have a good enough pitch, I can convince the CISO to bring it in, and it's just not true, right? Like if you don't have fine-grained access control, you don't have the right kind of auditing, you don't have potentially even the ability to run inside of their network instead of running as a SaaS, there's all of these things that will just stop you cold. And it won't even be a conversation. And I think that's something that people, especially when you're in the startup world and you're used to moving really fast and maybe breaking a few things along the way, they don't fully grok just how much there's not flexibility if you're talking to a financial system regulator. It's just there's no option, right? And that's a big part of these people's business is making sure they can keep operating a bank or they can keep operating a healthcare service or whatever it happens to be. And so I think being intimately familiar with what it takes to be secure and also even certified as secure in those environments, and a lot of it has to do with, frankly, some archaic regulations, but they're just not going to change. The more you can be familiar with that and have the right level of flexibility to be able to fit into those environments, the easier it will be for you to sell and not get past the POC. I think oftentimes what happens is there's a POC and it's okay and everybody loves it, and then you go to scale out and the CISO says like, well, wait a minute, how are we going to do, information egress protection or whatever it happens to be, and it just stops you cold. So I think that's one thing, and it's not very fancy work, and so that's the thing I think why startups maybe don't always grok it, is because it's not as fun as building agents. So that's one thing that I would say, and then I think the other thing that I would say is I think people that are getting there now maybe, but certainly a few years ago, people weren't setting themselves up to sell software to sell SaaS necessarily. They were used to selling, we'll give you support, but it's not going to be 24/7 live site with an SRE always up. Well, I'm sorry. People's expectations of now, having experienced cloud for however many years, they expect you to be there fixing it before they even notice that there's a problem. And that's not something to the earlier question about bolting on security. You can't bolt on operations. It has to be in your DNA from the beginning, or else you just don't know how to do it. And so I think those are the pieces that I think people don't necessarily anticipate because they're too focused on the idea and the technology, and not as much on what does it really look like to run it at a giant bank, or what does it look like to run it at a mission critical company where, airlines don't fly if you don't if your software doesn't work that particular day, right? And again, I think this is a place where we can partner. Actually, we do a lot of conversations with people, and I joke the airline's maybe not flying tomorrow. That's just Tuesday around Azure, right? We do a lot of this work with tons of mission critical customers, and we know how to build ourselves in a way that we can succeed and make sure that actually the airlines do fly the next day.
I'm flying back through Newark. Maybe we could change the analogy.
No.
Just
I go through my notebook of calls I've gotten.
I think all the things Brendan said were right. I think they're necessary, not sufficient, though. I think for the first time in a long time in the era of AI, we are seeing the developers have an extraordinarily strong vote. And so I don't think that you can compromise on taste and judgment in terms of the product. A lot of people have underestimated a lot of important companies that are rising in their sectors because they didn't have the security, compliance, and all of those things. Those are execution. They are necessary. They should be thought of on day one. But just because you do all of that work, that doesn't earn you the developer. That earns you the enterprise. And so I think that the most successful companies in the next era are going to earn the enterprise and then earn the love of the developer. And I think you're going to need both to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the iPhone came and replaced the BlackBerry, right? So the CISOs who didn't like the iPhone figured out how to like it eventually because everybody asked for it.
So you need both great product, and you also need to have whatever the security and reliability and responsibility is going to be required to sell into, if you want to be selling into large enterprises. All right, we are getting close to wrapping up with our first panel, and I want to just do a quick lightning round down the speaker list. So would love to hear from each of you, what's one key trend startups can't afford to ignore? Asha.
I think agents are joining the workforce, and so you should collaborate with them where your knowledge workers live. And so if you can use our agent service and wire up actions and knowledge and tools and actually deploy the agents in WhatsApp and Slack and Teams. And I think that as they do, the technology to actually support agents and collaborate with agents and get a lot out of them is already in your tenant. And so I would say embrace it, and let's welcome agents into the workforce as tools as well as autonomous partners to help us get things done.
I love it. I think that message came through. Did anyone hear about agents in the keynotes? That thing? Okay, good. All right, what about you, Ross?
There's a great book called Unstuck, and what it talks about is the most successful people. It's not that they try to get better at the stuff they're bad at. Instead, they try to emphasize the things they're really good at. What I find with most startups, they're really good at one thing, but they're not great at all things. And so find a partner like a hyperscaler that can help complement what you do. So as an example, If GTM is a particular weakness for you, then find a partner that can help you through the GTM side of the house and stay focused on what you do really well. It's not to say you won't have to make commitments on that GTM side, but try not to solve for everything, solve for what you do really well and partner for what you don't.
Michael, one trend we can't ignore.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say things that are okay to ignore would include like MCP and A2A and just like the latest thing that is getting baked into the overall, infrastructure that you can take for granted. It's just going to keep getting better and better. And I would shift over to the trend of revenue quality. Speaking as an investor, we have a number of kind of drag races to $100 million ARR that are viewed as like, well, once you've gotten to this point, you've made it. And I just think probably not. It's certainly going to put you in a very, very different and exceptional level of company, but that's not the only criteria investors care about. In reality, we value true enterprise traction far more. You could succeed at two customers of scale and in a way that's meaningful, i.e., pilot to conversion to expansion to system of record. If you have one or two companies that are seriously in that journey that would be meaningful to Microsoft, let's say, that's a very rarefied air, and you don't need to worry about the 100 million. And there are investors, believe it or not, that look at the top line revenue is great, let me look deeper, and we're one of those types of funds.
Love it.
I guess I would say that like everybody's focused on AI, and that means the bad guys are focused on AI too. And I think it's the Wild West right now in terms of security and safety and how even agentic communication between agents can be used in malicious ways. And I would definitely, I think, one of the other values of partnering with a company like Microsoft is, we see all of those bad behaviors probably before you do, because we have the information that the folks who are attacking want. And so we can do a better job helping you protect your customers and your services from a very rapidly evolving threat landscape that is probably evolving as fast as I've ever seen in the computing industry.
And then we'll work our way back this way, Brendan. I'm going to give you one last lightning round question. What's one kind of underrated resource that we offer here at Microsoft that you would want more startups to know about or to use?
I guess I will say, like, we can really help you build successful open source projects. We've done a lot of, whether it's governance or how do you encourage community and contributions. It's not, I think people think you throw it up on GitHub and like magic happens. I hate to break it to you, but no. But we can help, I think, with talking about like how do you build community? How do you get interest and traction?
Yeah, agree 1,000%. One thing about coming to work here from a much smaller company is I'm just staggered by the global scale of Microsoft. And obviously, whether you're invested by M12 or not, or in any of these any of these programs or not, we're all here kind of as one group at Build, but there's an international attendee base here. These are all good people to get to know if you want to grow outside of Silicon Valley, outside of the tech hubs, whether you're based there or not. And I find it's often just like making these social connections and networking. That's something we try to do through our investment platform, but it's also just a matter of like getting to know how freaking big the company is and how they are basically operating everywhere. It's a huge asset when it rolls into one technology platform and something in common.
Yeah, I think for me, maybe it's not underutilized, but maybe it's misunderstood, is the GTM side of the house for Microsoft. It can be an incredibly powerful tool for you. I think a lot of people think of Microsoft as a lead machine, basically become a partner and in comes the funnel. It doesn't quite work that way. We obviously want to see a lot of deep engagement, that you're building something customers really care about, that you're willing to serve and support, you're obsessed about the customer. But if you figure out how to engage Microsoft in that process, it can be an incredibly powerful GTM partnership. You can really maximize and leverage the muscle of Microsoft globally.
For me, I think that the only limit to what this technology can do is our ability to hold it accountable and to align it. So similar to what Brendan said. And so for me, it's our AI safety and security suite. Specifically, the thing I'm most excited about right now is our red teaming agent. we're now using agents to execute actions and do them in an automated way to then give continuous observability. And I think that is the loop that we will need to become the best in the world at together. And I think that we have all of that off the shelf, and we can be working with you to customize it for your application or for your use case. And I think that's necessary for what we want to see happen in the world.
Love it. So we got AI safety and security, we got open source, global scale to help you grow, and go to market. All right, awesome. Well, please join me in thanking the panel for all their great remarks, and we'll welcome our startups to the stage.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, so this is phase 2 of the panel discussion. So thank you both so much for joining me. I want to welcome you both to the stage. We have Yair from 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗸𝗏 and Vitaly from Pharos AI here. So I would love to just start off by having you both introduce yourselves, your companies, and what you've been building.
Awesome. I guess I can go first. I'm Vitaly Gordon. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pharos AI. Our mission is to make sure that every dollar you folks invest in engineering has 10x the impact that it has today. What we help companies with is really understanding their data that comes from their entire kind of software development stack, and really kind of use that data to kind of enhance the way that companies operate their engineering teams.
And my name is Yair. I'm the founder and the CEO of Bria. Live in New Jersey, moved from Tel Aviv recently. Bria is generation in Hebrew. It's a 5-year-old startup, which in the visual generative AI, so we don't do agent, we only do pixel and musics. What we do is a little bit different. Every data that we used for training the model is fully licensed with the attribution engine that we create. So when someone generates something with Bria, we go back to the training set and see who contribute the most for this specific generation, and we reward the artist. So in a way, this is the Spotify model for Gen AI, how you can create a new ecosystem when the data owner can earn something from their data. With that, we develop a developer platform. We enable that for developers, not for designers, not for marketing, for developers. And they can use that as a source code or as an API as part of their product.
I guess your company is such a good example of thinking about security and responsibility from day one of what are enterprises going to need to be able to use these types of image generating
a lot of the things that the panel earlier said, I fully support.
Yeah. Great. Would love to hear, maybe, Yair, you can start just why Microsoft? What made you choose building on Azure?
Because it goes again to a lot of the things that mentioned here before. If you want to build something that enterprise will use, and we go to this very edge of the spectrum where we are saying that everything must be copyrighted and safe and legal and no risk, and the partners that, the clients that we are working with is big enterprises. So the natural place for us is to partner with the Microsoft, not only because of the innovation and the infrastructure, that's great, but also because of element that mentioned. I think that Ross mentioned that about go-to-market. What does it mean, go-to-market enterprise? And why it's not only lead generation, why it's also credibility and get the feedback from the client. So there's a lot of reason to work with Microsoft if you are for developer and for enterprises. It's like
a little matchmaking. That's what we like to do. We like to bring enterprises and startups together and matchmake them. What about you, Vitaly?
So similar to what Yair said, obviously Microsoft presence in the enterprise, is kind of ubiquitous. If there is a company that ever bought software, they probably bought it from Microsoft as well. But also we work with developers and development teams, right? So also the Microsoft presence there is also kind of ubiquitous, especially around all the kind of recent AI and agent enhancements. So, a lot of the code is obviously on GitHub that is now kind of owned by Microsoft. The first kind of Copilot tools, that was also kind of GitHub, but also even if you don't use the GitHub tools, most of the kind of agents and coding assistants are now run on VS Code. like Microsoft is pretty much, everywhere, and this is why we felt that this is the kind of most natural alignment for us to kind of go and partner with Microsoft. And thankfully, you guys also said yes. So that also helped.
So it sounds like enterprise, go-to-market, also a focus on developers, credibility. Maybe we'll stick with you for a second. Would love to hear more about your experience with the Microsoft for Startups program. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We want to hear it all.
Yeah, so it's kind of like crazy for me, to sit here from an extremely privileged position because we're part of the Pegasus program that, out of the, I think you mentioned 150,000, startups in the ecosystem, there's about 150 that gets invited to the Microsoft kind of Pegasus program. So we're kind of like the Marines, the few, the proud, right? And in that, we just get so much help. One of them is kind of, I think was mentioned before, and if it's hard for Microsoft execs to navigate Microsoft, just imagine what it's like for a tiny startup like us to actually understand who we talk to, but like just the access to the resources to really help us understand deeply like what the customer care about. So I think between Brendan and Asha, they talked about like really the way to get to customers or enterprise and be successful is really to understand their pain points, right? And sure, we can try and go, but like we just as a startup don't have that level of access, right? So we can engage with the Microsoft AEs, we can with the app innovation specialists, with the Six Sigma, the black belts, and kind of all of those people that just understand deeply what the customers care about. Another thing just was mentioned about security, right? So, a lot of startups think like, oh, security, I'm just gonna get my, SOC 2 or ISO certification and I'm good. Like every enterprise will talk to me. Like the thing to understand in the enterprise, this is just kind of like the table stakes to, get in the game, like have that certification. Like every single enterprise will have their own view on how they want to do security, what they care about. And by, working with Microsoft that they already either help them to design these systems or they just can tell us, hey, you know what, this CISO cares about this thing, so you should focus when you reply to their questionnaire on these items and make sure that you have this thing kind of top notch. So all of that information, like it's invaluable because in many cases for startups like us in the enterprise, we just don't get a chance to make too many mistakes, right? If we like annoyed the wrong person in the organization because we were not prepared, we were, just didn't know how to answer it correctly, we'll probably lose the deal and will not speak to them for the next 2 years, right? So that is definitely an area we get a lot of help from Microsoft.
So it sounds like we are helping kind of navigate the machine, navigate the large, complex organization, and also help kind of guide you, since we do work so much with large enterprise customers, helping guide you with the few at-bats that you do have, around what we think to anticipate and really set you up for success for those conversations.
Yes.
Yeah, great. And then Yair, we're all moving so fast. There's a lot of gaps, I'm sure, that exist. What are areas that you think you'd love to see more from Microsoft for Startups program, Microsoft, as we can sort of, how do we better support founders in their journey?
Yeah, so I will say something about the previous question, which is also related to this one. So one thing is missing, if there is a founder here that looking for an idea, one thing is missing is a translator. Enterprise to startup, startup to enterprise. We don't know, we don't speak the same language. And if someone can take that as a task and build a startup that explains that will be great. Until then, Microsoft can help in that. And part of the thing that I believe Microsoft can help, and this is part of the thing that we see, is in translation. What does it really mean? So it's way, way more than a lead generation of credit. I think that also something that people talk about it in the previous discussion is around accountability and responsibility, and how to build things that last. And again, I'm talking from position, of course. We took a specific way that how we use the training set and how we enable that for developer and for enterprises. But I think that it's really, really important to have this discussion of what does it mean, this generative AI revolution, how it's going to create a sustainable economy, how can we not be in a position that the paper today said that one of the OpenAI senior manager, Ilya, create a doomsdays for the day that Gen AI will be smarter than human. Now, Gen AI will be not smarter, but create a lot of value, but we need to do that in a responsible and safe, and this is where I see Microsoft as a important player.
That's great.
Actually, Annie, I have a very tactical, maybe like answer to your question. Like, I would love for Microsoft to do like a call for startups, like, you know, like Y Combinator and like investors do. Like, if you can, you know, make it easy for us, just go around your kind of, you know, product teams and just say, hey, you know what, this is really an area where maybe we have a gap, and we would love to hear about startups that, you know, can help us, and, you know, have this list somewhere. I think that will be tremendously helpful.
Great. So maybe it fits a little bit into this the translator, right?
Yeah.
Between what are the gaps in the enterprise and translating that to the startups and kind of vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. I think we have time for about one more question. So would love to hear from you both. What trends are you most excited about that you see emerging in today's startup landscape?
I'll let you start because I can go for a long time there. Yeah.
I think that every technology has a cycle. There is a hype, and then there is a disappointment, and then there is the curve of productization. I think that we probably almost at the end of the hype cycle, maybe we even start to see the fall into this valley, and the fact that people sit on the stage and talking about things that 2 years ago was considered outrageous. It's like security and think about the future and where's the real value in productization and monetization, and not talking about, can you help me to create a great prompt engineering? Mm-hmm. It means that we are making some progress to the real value of this technology. And I think as we will go to the plateau of productization, we will see more solutions, which are not the obvious one, that we don't see today. We are in the building blocks. We are in the part of the infrastructure, and I'm still waiting to see what people can do with that, which is not just creating more of the same of what they are doing today.
Yep. Yep.
Well, in a way, where's the Ubers and Amazon and Spotify of Gen AI?
Yeah, so for me, this is by far the most exciting time to be alive. Like, this is like, you know, in case you wanted to know how I feel, then, you know, I guess that's it. Like, we never had such a transformational technology, so widely available, so cheap, you know, to use for everyone. Like, whatever is the, you know, kind of issue, you know, that you folks care about, healthcare, education, you know, poverty, like, it doesn't matter. Like, we now have the tools to kind of solve it. So even if, like, let's say, kind of, you know, AI progress stopped at this moment and never continue, we still probably can, like, increase the GDP of the world like tenfold or something like that. And obviously, all that technology will be increased. Now, so obviously, we'll have bumps along the way, right? Like, yeah, we'll figure out there will be bad actors, there will be, but I'm just so excited. You know, I have 2 younger kids. I'm now even thinking about, like, hey, should I, like, pull them out of, like, this school system and, like, you know, educate them and, like, this AI? Like, how do we prepare them for the world? Because the life that they will have will be so dramatically different than ours, and I just can't wait to see it. It even might be that the person who will live forever was already born, right? We might even be, you know, now able to, like, fix all, you know, diseases, current and future ones. It's just amazing, and I'm just, you know, happy to be, you know, alive at this point in time.
I love it. I think that is like the perfect end, which is what a time to be alive. I know I'm leaving this panel with a lot of optimism. We there were some valleys maybe, but I'm leaving with a lot of optimism. So thank you all so much for joining. Thank you both for spending some time with us today.
Thank you for having us.
If anyone's interested in learning more, there's a QR code. We've got more information on Microsoft for Startups program. Also, down on the show floor, there's a bunch of startups who are demoing all their great technology. So I encourage you to go check that out. Follow us on LinkedIn, and thank you all so much for coming today. Enjoy the rest of it.